I'm Steve Duke, and this is the Two Roads Podcast. Today on the show, we have a woman who's actually best known by her Instagram and TikTok handle, 5ftMol. Now, for the last 7 years, Molly has worked as a ski instructor, traveling all around the world chasing winter. But lately, she completely blew up on Instagram and TikTok. She started these accounts only a couple of months ago, and combined now has 80,000 followers across the two platforms. And that's actually how I found her. I saw this reel where she was talking about the day in her life of working as a ski instructor. And I thought, I have to talk to this woman. I have to have Molly on the show. And so today I had a conversation with her and it was really fantastic. You're going to hear about the video Molly watched at 14 to lead her to only ever do things she loved and to base her career around that theory. How Molly has spent the last 7 years traveling the world and working as a ski instructor. What to do if you want to travel more in your life, but are afraid or don't know where to start. I know a lot of people who are in this situation, and Molly has some really great advice, which she shares during the episode. What happened with her two social accounts on Instagram and TikTok, and how she amassed 80,000 followers on those two platforms in just 2 months. We talk about what life is like living in Japan and some of the things that most surprised Molly about living there. Molly has a really unique and wonderful attitude to life that I'm really drawn to and that really resonates with me. And I think that comes out during our conversation. So just before we get into today's conversation, there's something that I really want to tell you about. And this is something that I've been working on for actually quite some time. If you follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn, you may already know about it. But if not, what I've announced over the last week is a new program called Divergence. And this is all about trying to help people find a job that will actually make them happy. So I started this podcast with that goal. I realized there's a lot of people who were doing a job that they didn't really love, but weren't sure what it is that they did want to do. And hopefully, whether this is the first episode you've listened to, or whether you've listened to many of them, the podcast has been helpful in that way. You've been able to listen to people's stories, hear what they do, maybe get some inspiration or motivation from that. But it's still really hard to actually go through that process of figuring out what specific job is it that you'd like, what sort of lifestyle do you want, and then making that change from whatever you're in at the minute into that new career. And that's what this program is all about doing. So it's a 4-week program specifically designed from all the lessons that I've learned about what works, what doesn't work when trying to find out what it is that you want to do. I'm only going to run this for a small cohort of people on the first time round. So you can sign up now for the waitlist so that when it fully launches and you can actually book a seat on it, you'll be first in line. If this is something that you're interested in, you can find the link in the show notes for this episode. So just in your podcast player, you can open it up, and at the top of kind of the description of the podcast, you'll see the link, and that's what you can use to sign up to the waitlist. And then also if you follow me on socials, all the links will be there as well. But for now, I hope you enjoy my episode, my conversation with 5ftMol. Let's get into it.
Growing up, all of Instagram was always like everyone's best bits and stuff. And recently I've started seeing a lot more people showing reality side of things on it. And I think that's what I want to do, is show more reality on Instagram and TikTok or wherever.
It's very wholesome as well, though. Is that something that you consciously do?
I didn't think about that. So many people commented that on that video you were talking about, the intro about me one. I didn't really think about it being wholesome. To me, it's all quite normal.
Well, I guess maybe normal life is sometimes pretty wholesome. So it's, by definition, the normal stuff is wholesome, and it's only when we go away and try to create this like perfect, like curated picture that then it goes away from wholesome. But maybe like that's what people see so much in their feeds, that when they actually then see something that's normal, they're like, oh my God, that's so nice. That's so wholesome. Like,
yeah, so unnatural, but it's normal.
And so what, you started the Instagram only a couple of months ago, right? And it kind of blew up. How many followers do you have now?
37,000, I think, on Instagram. And then it's like 45,000 on TikTok. TikTok went crazy first, and then Instagram was a bit slower, but still, like, yeah, I started 2 months ago, and I didn't expect any of it to go like that crazy. like the main reason I started was because I always get questions about like traveling and how to work abroad and all this stuff from friends of friends or like my sister's friends or whoever. And so I was thinking like, oh, I could just say all this stuff in videos and then it could help them, and then I won't have to type the same paragraph over and over again, sort of thing.
So when did you start the TikTok then?
I started them both at the same time.
What?
Because I never used TikTok before, and I always thought it was all like, you know, all the dancey platform and everything. But I thought, well, if I'm posting to Instagram, I might as well post it on TikTok, because it was just the same thing, really, like Reels. And then, yeah, that went crazy. Within, I think it was like 3 days, and then I had 20,000 followers. And I was just like, I woke up and I was like, whoa, what's going on? all because of the micro pig video, really, originally. Which, the story in that is all true. I genuinely Googled coffee, wanted a coffee, and that was the closest place, the Micro Pig Cafe. And obviously it's funny because to me, like I know about them, and like I know they're a thing, so it's not abnormal, even though it's like obviously different and cool. But to people in other countries, it's like, whoa, what is that?
So for people who are listening to this and mightn't have seen the video or know what this is, what are they?
It's a cafe, basically. You go get coffee, and I think there's food in there. I don't know, I didn't get food, but and then there's loads of little micro pigs running around. And there's other ones like cat cafes, and they have owl cafes, and some of them are like ethical and some of them are a bit dodgy, but like I think that's the reason why it went crazy, because there's all this controversial like opinions on if they're good or not. But the Micro Pig Cafe, like they adopt the pigs, it says they do. I mean, no one really knows 100% what they actually do, I guess, but a random little thing to do.
And before this, like, had you been kind of making content before? Because your content is quite good, right? Like, is it something that you'd always been doing, but not like not posting that much, or did you just start?
Yeah, like, well, I started this Instagram as like a completely new Instagram. So like I had my old Instagram was just like my Instagram, and I would always post little edits of me skateboarding or skiing or snowboarding and like mash them together. And then I've done a little bit of social media work before with like out in the snow and helping people make edits. I always love making edits. I like making an edit on my phone in like 5 minutes. But it was more of a COVID thing, I think, that I picked that up because I had so much time. So I always run out of storage on my phone. So I thought I need to put them all together, and then I can delete all the videos and just have one smaller one. So that was the main reason why I actually started this one, because I ran out of storage and I was like, I don't want to delete them all though.
I think I saw in one of your videos that you said that when you were 14, you watched this video, and the video said something along the lines of, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I've seen that video, or I've read that quote. I think a lot of people probably have, and they look at it and they go, oh yeah, 100%. I completely agree. And then they never do anything with it. They just go back to whatever they were doing before. You're not the same. You did something different.
When I was 14, I like watched so much YouTube, and I would always watch, this is something that no one knows about me, by the way, like barely anyone knows. I would just watch video after video of motivational videos of like speakers like Les Brown or Toby Robbins or like Mel Robinson. All of them, I would just have them on repeat. And I was so interested, like growing up, about the mind and how some people can be unhappy and how some people can be happy, sort of thing. So I was always like, I want to be doing something I want to enjoy. And hearing like them all talk about how, you know, you don't need all the money to be happy, like if you're truly happy and all of this stuff, I remember just thinking like, I just want that. I still listen to them sometimes, but not as much as I used to. But I moved away from my school town. My family moved an hour away, but I still went to that school. So I lived in an area where like I didn't know anyone, didn't have any friends, sort of thing. So I didn't really have much to do. So I just watched tons of YouTube videos, motivational videos. Sounds quite sad, but
So when was the first point then that you actually put this into action?
like through school, I remember like going to certain lessons, and if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do well in it. And so it's sort of, for me, it was always like, if I enjoy something, I'm going to put a lot of effort into it. And then when it got to that point where I was 17, everyone was thinking about going to uni and what they were going to do next. And I remember having absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And I didn't have any like passions. Like, I didn't think I had any passions. I was like, I don't want to do anything at university. I don't really know what I want to do. And it's a lot of money. The only reason I wanted to go to uni was to party, really, like, because everyone said it was so fun. And I thought, well, it's not really a good enough reason to go, is it? But so I remember sitting down with my parents and they were like, well, what do you actually enjoy doing? Let's break it down and think about a few things that you actually love. And I'd been skiing like 3 times and I wasn't a great skier at all. But I loved it. And I was like, I love skiing. I love photography and art. All the things I sort of loved, all of them sort of things where it's hard to make a career from. My mum found a course which her friend's daughter did in New Zealand. And then I signed up to that without a clue of like what I was signing up for. I signed up like the ski instructor's course. So it's a 12-week course and you have 2 exams in it, like the level 1 exam and the level 2 exam. And you get all this training either side. But to sign up, you need a certain minimum ability. And I was the worst person out of like 60 people. And it's funny, I got a job at that same mountain the next year. And my trainers and examiners said to me, Molly, we all laughed a lot about you when you first arrived. Because I couldn't even ski. Everyone else was on their like uni race club teams and all of this. And I was just 17. I thought you just signed up and then got this certificate because it's a long course. I didn't know you had to really learn about it and do these exams. I didn't know anything, honestly. And I learned so much though through doing it.
You do this, what, age 17? You just like move to New Zealand, do this course. Your parents were like, they were supportive of this? They were just like, do it? That's incredible.
Get out. No, yeah. Yeah, they were really. Like, their deal was they would pay for half the course and I would pay for half the course. Because the courses are really expensive, like really expensive, some of them, because they come with accommodation and some of them are like 10, 12 grand, some of these courses. But I chose the cheaper route because obviously I had to pay half of it. So I just chose the route of just the training and the exams. I didn't include accommodation or food, which everyone else in my course had. So, which was really stupid because I got there and I was like, oh, where am I going to live? I don't know. All right, so the girl that my mum's friend's daughter was, she was out there. So she picked me up from the airport and I didn't know who she was at all, but she let me stay on her sofa for a couple of days. And then I found someone on Facebook who I lived at there, like through the groups of rentals, lived there for a bit. And I ended up actually joining the course halfway through, like where they all lived, because it was just too much of a struggle back then. But yeah, I was 17 and turned 18 when I was there. Because I'm a late birthday, I'm in August. And yeah, I didn't really, looking back, I didn't have a clue what I was doing whatsoever. But I learned a lot.
At the end of this course, and are you like, oh yeah, I actually really do love this. Like I want to do this for a little while.
When I was doing the course, we're on a mountain and there's all these instructors around and some of them have been doing seasons for 10 years. Some of them have been doing it for longer. And then I thought, well, I can like have fun, ski and get paid. So why would I not keep doing this sort of thing? Because I was always thinking, oh, maybe I'll go to uni at some point because there's all that pressure around going, get a degree and all this stuff. So I always thought about doing it after that year. And then I thought, oh, I'll do another season. And then now I just don't think about going at all. But
you reckon that's it?
I think so. Maybe in the future if I find something I want to learn about. But I think I'd need the interest to do it.
I went to uni after school, but then sometimes I thought about, oh, would I go back and do something? Because I think like as I've got older, there's been things I'm like genuinely interested in. And I'm like, I would actually like, I would just want to learn about this thing. And so uni might be a good way for me to learn about it. But that was not the way I was thinking about things when I was leaving school. You know, I was just like, no, I'm just going into a degree. Like I wasn't even that like fussed about it.
You have to make it your life, really, don't you, to really excel in it.
Exactly. And I think it was hard because I did okay, but I never excelled at it and I never worked in it because I didn't love it. And there was other people in my course who were like obsessed with it. That's what they did at the weekend. You know, that's what their interests were, especially after school. I think in school you can get away with it. You know, I was quite academic in school, even in the subjects I wasn't mad about, because I was like, I don't know, you can just put it in. But I think once it gets after school, you're not able to do that anymore. If you want to be really, really good, you actually have to be interested in it and like putting in the extra work. So then what? Do you start doing like ski seasons in different parts of the world once you've finished your like course?
It's really hard after you just pass the exams because you don't have any experience. There's all these mountains that are hiring ski instructors in Europe or wherever, and they all want a season or two experience. And it's like, well, how do you get the experience if you're not going to give me a job without the experience? So it's really hard to find somewhere. And it got later and later before the Northern Hemisphere in Japan and Europe. And someone just posted on this Facebook group I was in for the ski instructors saying about this job in Japan in a place called Aomori. And no one took this job. No one wanted to take it. And I didn't know why until I got there. But I was like, oh, I'll take it because they didn't need any experience or anything. I got there and basically Aomori is like the most Japanese town ever with no foreigners. Like it's right at the top of the main island of Japan. And when I tell people now that I've done a season in Aomori, they're always like, what? Like so shocked because you don't see foreigners up there. And I was the first time they ever hired a foreigner and the only one. So I was the only ski instructor that was a foreigner up there. I didn't know a word of Japanese going. I didn't know anything about Japan. At this time I was 18 and yeah, I remember getting to Tokyo and I was like, how do I like read these signs? I don't know what I'm doing. And this old lady helped me with my giant ski bag that I had. And then, yeah, I got picked up. I got a bus to Aomori somehow and I got picked up by this little man in this van. Because I also didn't get a SIM card for years because I thought, oh, I'll just survive off Wi-Fi and do it cheaply because I don't want to spend money on a SIM card. So I had no SIM card or anything. And this man came running over and he was like, Mori. And I was like, that's me. Yeah, I'll just get in with you and then you can take me wherever we're going. And then I got to this hotel and the reason no one took this job, I basically lived in this hotel and the nearest supermarket or convenience store, anything was like a half an hour drive down the mountain. And I obviously didn't have a car, so I was pretty much stuck there. It was great. I got to ski all the time. I got the proper culture shock, basically, of Japan, which if you go to some westernized areas, you wouldn't see so much. But I got the full experience, which I did hate for about a month. And I was like, what am I doing here? I can't speak to anyone. Like, I don't know any Japanese. This is so hard to learn. And no one spoke English up there, like barely anyone. But a lot of people were coming up to me saying they want to learn English and stuff. So, but I ended up enjoying it a lot after I thought like, oh, I'm going to have to like immerse myself into this culture properly. And it was great. Like one of the best things I've ever done.
How did you get by? Like, did you start like learning the language and stuff?
A little bit. I don't think I knew that much back then. I learned a lot because I knew nothing. So I'd learned, it seemed like I learned a lot. And I learned, how to be polite, which is really important here. But I honestly don't know how I got by. I remember one time some of these Japanese people took me into the town because I didn't really get out much. And they took me there, took me to their bar and took me to this club and then took me back up the mountain the next day. And I have no idea how we communicated because I didn't have like Google Translate. I don't know what we said to each other, but it must have just been funny to watch.
On one hand, I imagine that was like hell and a nightmare, like being stuck in this place where you can't speak the language, you've no idea what's going on. On the other hand, I'm like, wow, that actually sounds pretty cool to go straight into like a really authentic, like Japanese like place and have those experiences. So it's kind of like flip side, right?
Yeah, definitely. And now I think I see so much that like if I could go back there now and have that opportunity now, I think I'd learn so much more because of that area. Like around where I live now, there's a lot of Westerners and there's a lot of English speaking going on, and especially with the sort of people I know, everyone's speaking English. So it is hard to learn Japanese because you're not listening to it around it all the time. You have to really make an effort. Whereas up there, it would be so easy to, well, not easy, but easier to learn because it's all you hear. But I think I didn't put as much effort in as I would now back then.
How many years ago was this?
I was in 2016.
And so for the last 7 years, have you been living in winter and kind of going from ski season to ski season?
Yeah, pretty much. I did back-to-back winters since then until the COVID year. And then I went back to the UK for the summer, but I still worked in the indoor snow centre. So I was still on the snow. I was still in like 3 degrees, -3 or whatever. If you saw me a month ago, I'd have been really burnt because I haven't seen the sun that much. So this is my first proper summer, really.
And so for someone who like doesn't know, like how does that work? Like the Northern Hemisphere winters for ski instructors, I guess, are what, like Europe, Japan and Canada?
Yeah, America and Canada.
Yeah, and then in Southern Hemisphere, New Zealand, anywhere else?
New Zealand, Australia and Chile.
And so where did you split your time across?
So I've mostly done just New Zealand and Japan, back-to-backs really. So I did 5 in New Zealand and then I worked in Italy a little bit for some of the winters, but we could only do a maximum of 8 weeks there, so it was more on and off.
How long do the seasons last? And like, what do you do in between? What does a year look like, you know, if you were to kind of take a 12-month, you know, period?
December through to March, April is the Japanese or Northern Hemisphere winter. And then you've got May and a little bit of June off or free or trying to find work, basically, most of us. And then you've got June, July, usually June it starts and then ends in October, the Southern Hemisphere winter. And then you've got end of October, November and start of December, also struggling for most people. I think a lot of people think ski instructors are rich. That's what I have this perception of, or a lot of people have the perception that ski instructors make a lot of money. In France, they do because their wage is high and they have to be really high qualified. But most ski instructors I know are always struggling because of that time off. It's really hard to find a job for a month. No one's going to give you a job for a month unless you lie to them, really. Before COVID, I would fly back to the UK between every season because I could work there, because without a visa in these countries, you can't find other work because usually you just have a visa for the specific work. And so I flew back to the UK. I remember working 3 jobs at one point just to afford like flights to the next place and the next place. And that's what it's constantly kind of a cycle of like buying flights, waiting for your first paycheck and then like being okay and then buying flights at the end again.
And does that like stress you out, or are you just like, it's part of the lifestyle, I'm used to it, and it's kind of you know, something that you're willing to put up with because of all the other things that you get from this kind of career and lifestyle?
I think it did stress me out at the start a little bit because I wanted to go, you know, I wanted to go and work at these places and I wanted to make sure I could do it. So I would put a lot of effort into making money in those between seasons, because on the seasons, I never really thought about saving money too much, which I should have, but I was always like, oh, just have fun while you're here and everything. And then it gets to the end of the season, then you need the money. But I think now I'm okay with it. It's sort of, it builds up a little bit. But because I started when I was 17, I never really had savings, you know. All my savings went on that first winter. So it's been hard to create the savings to then be able to do those things without worrying too much about work between the seasons sort of thing.
And I imagine as well, like once you are working and you're getting paid, like you want to reward yourself, right? Otherwise you're like, well, why am I kind of paying for these flights to like get here and then work my ass off to like just be saving, right? Like you probably want, this is the time when you want to actually enjoy yourself and do some fun stuff.
You want to travel a bit at the end. Like in New Zealand, I wanted to go around the South Island and spend a load of money on that. And because you want to explore, you know, you don't want to spend your whole time working in that country. You want to see it as well, definitely.
And so what does a typical day look like for you then when you are working?
Sometimes you have a lesson booked in advance and sometimes you don't, and you'll go to this sort of lineup and you'll get a lesson if it comes, and if not, you don't. Ski instructing is not very consistent either. We've got the busy periods like school holiday periods and everything like that. Your confirmed work, everyone's guaranteed work. But the start of December or end of March, sometimes you're working, sometimes you're not. So that's why, like, the more you return to certain places, ski instructing, and the more exams you do, the higher you go up priority lists at most places to be confirmed for more work. So it's kind of like a reward scheme a little bit.
But you only get paid if you do a lesson.
Yeah, sadly. And there's only a max you can do, right? Because there's only a certain time where the ski lift's open. So we usually work, like a group lesson would be like 10 till 4. So it's like 6 hours. That's it for the day. So you can't really do overtime if you want to because the mountain's shut.
I guess on the plus side, you get to live on these pretty amazing mountains. And do you ski or snowboard?
I do both. I've skied a lot more, and I'd say I'm better at skiing, but I teach in both, and I like to sort of even it out now while I'm here on my days off.
In terms of kind of this, you know, work and lifestyle of kind of doing like always kind of living in winter and doing ski seasons in different places, like you talk about how some people think that like ski instructors are rich, right? Whereas like that's not the case. So that's kind of like a misconception some people have about this. People who work in these kinds of jobs or live this kind of lifestyle. What other like misconceptions do people have? What are they typically like surprised about when you tell them?
People think ski instructors get to ski a lot, when actually you spend a lot of time. I spent like 3 years, my first few years, on the magic carpet, like the beginner slope, every day with the young, sometimes 3-year-olds, you know, that sometimes don't want to be there. And you just have to do that. And you get the days where you get to ski, but obviously we all do the job because we love skiing, essentially. No one does the job because they like looking after crying 3-year-olds. But you don't get to ski that much, which is one of the reasons a lot of people quit at the end of the day of ski instructing or find a different path so they can ski more, because of that work-life balance, because ski instructors don't get paid that much. You see the lesson price and it's like $1,000 a lesson, and that ski instructor's getting paid like maybe 50 of that. That's a big thing at the minute where people are really struggling because the pay is really quite low in most places. Australia actually is the highest paid country, I think, for ski instructors.
The $1,000, like, does that go to like the ski school and they just kind of own the customers? So then they get that $1,000 and they're like, oh, Molly, you know, here's $50 for like your lesson. Yeah,
pretty much. Like, especially if you're working in big corporate companies like Vale or, you know, the big ones, Whistler, or they're making a lot of money, whoever owns them companies, and in New Zealand as well.
Does anybody ever go direct? Like if you had like somebody who came to, you know, the same place, like maybe a couple of seasons in a row, and they know you and they like you as an instructor, like for their kids or for themselves, could they just like, hey, Molly, like next year, why don't we do this? And, you know, I'll pay you 500, but you keep the whole 500, cheaper for me, better for you. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I've thought about it so many times and I would absolutely love to do it. And everyone would. But the only issue is insurance problems. Like if I was teaching someone and they did break their leg, it would be my fault and you're not insured. Whereas when you work for the companies, you are insured with these sort of things. So that's the main sort of hindrance. I think there's other ways to go about it. Like you can sort of do guiding and you can get certain insurance packages for these sorts of things, but you have to build up that clientele as well. So then you have that work coming through. So at the start, it's just not doable at all. One day that'll be good, the dream. You get paid what they pay for the lesson.
I'm sure you get people, maybe you do, maybe you don't. You can tell me, right? But I would guess that you get people saying, oh, Molly, it's time to settle down. Like, do you want to, come home or go back to uni or get a real job? Do you get that a lot?
I don't get it a lot, to be fair, but I have seen it a lot with other people. I'm lucky that my parents really think what I'm doing is great, and they don't think of uni or settling down as they don't fit that social norm as seeing that as like you've made it. They sort of see what I'm doing as you've made it, which is great, because they always say like they wish they could have done it when they were growing up, but it wasn't sort of feasible for them. And same with like my granddad, and he always loves hearing the stories of what I've got to say whenever I go home. And I've got a good support system, but I know a lot of people do end up backing out of the lifestyle because of that. There's no consistent pay and all of that. It is hard to make it a life in the future, especially if you're thinking about having kids, and that's going to cost loads of money, all of that sort of real life stuff. You need a real job. But I haven't had the pressure too much, which is why I want to keep it going and want to encourage other people to do it as well, because I always think at the end of the day, like, you can do that in the future if you want to, if you want to settle down, if you want to focus on it, you can do it. But if you don't ever do this part, then you're never going to do it.
Yeah, 100%. You can't really go, you can't be sitting there at 35 with like 3 young kids and, just go to your partner, hey, I was thinking about going and, working a couple of ski seasons. Like, that's not really going to work.
Yeah, exactly. You've missed it.
I'm sure that there's people who like dream of this and for a couple of reasons don't do it, right? I imagine one of them might be like pressures of the people, like either parents or friends or family, whatever else, saying like, no, like, come on, you have to go to uni or you have to get a job, like, don't go off doing this thing. There might be other reasons as well. You've got somebody who's like kind of on the fence, but like, I kind of want to do this, but like, I'm not sure. What is it that you'd say to them? Yeah. So are they kind of the common reasons then that you hear from people? It's like, oh, I'm afraid of the unknown.
Yeah, actually, since starting my account, that's like the biggest, most common question I see is people being scared to do it, or saying like, I want to do that, but I'm scared, or I don't know how to start. And I think the fear is a big thing for people, because it's like the fear of the unknown. But for me, I always think the excitement like overrides the fear every time, because there's so many opportunities. I think thinking about the opportunities you'll gain through these experiences is way better than not finding anything out, just being in the same position you're in. The first step for me was always thinking about what I enjoy and giving it a go, and then trying to make that a lifestyle. Book a flight and go. And there's so many people in the same boat as well. A lot of people don't realise, they think solo travelling or, I don't know, I'm going to be alone, have no friends and so far from home. But there's so many people in almost every country doing the same thing. You'll meet them, like-minded people. I think people are scared to be alone and scared to change. If they're in a comfy life where they've got their friends and they've got this routine, changing the routine is hard. And especially with this kind of lifestyle where nothing's really constant, things change a lot. So it is scary for a lot of people, but I think it's exciting. Like for me, if I was doing a job for 2 years, I'd be quite bored. I think even though I'm doing the same job, like moving around keeps it really exciting for me.
But the fact that like you were doing this, you started traveling when you were 17, like it strikes me that you're naturally quite comfortable with change. But there's some people who like kind of naturally, that's not their preset, right? They're not naturally comfortable. Do you think those people can kind of start to get more comfortable with like less structure in their life and having a bit more change? Or do you think like, look, if you're predetermined to like comfort, you should probably just stick with that because you would hate this lifestyle?
It can be eased into as well. You don't have to do like fly to the other side of the world like I did when you're really young, but you can start with like a day trip somewhere random on your own. I think doing things alone is really important to feeling comfortable, because if I had always done what I've done with a group of friends or like a partner or something, I don't think I'd be as confident. I think the solo side of it, doing anything alone, even if it's just like going for lunch by yourself, which is a really weird thing in most Western places. But in Japan, it's huge. Everyone just eats on their own a lot of the time, has lunch on their own. And it's really common, but sometimes it can feel really awkward if you're alone sort of eating to most people. But doing like small things, going to places on your own and then building it up and then like feeling comfortable with that, I think that'll be good for people that are nervous to do it.
Let's talk a bit about kind of solo traveling then as well, because I'm interested in that side of it. What does your friend group look like? You know, do you end up kind of working like similar seasons to other like ski instructors, or is it a lot of like, oh, I'm friends with people for 4 months and then I kind of never see them again? Like, how does that all work out, and how do you find that?
Yeah, it's a mix, really. Some people, yeah, you're with them for a season and then you won't see them ever or for ages. But in the snow industry, a lot of people are going to the same places, really. There's only so many places you can really ski, especially in the southern hemisphere, because there's not as many places to go. A lot of people get pushed there if they're doing it full time. So you end up seeing the same people over and over again. Or I've had friends on my first ever season, and then I haven't seen them for years, and then randomly they pop up in another country at the same job as me, and I'm like, hey.
That must be amazing.
It's so cool. It's really cool. You always know someone who knows someone. So if you do go to a random place, usually someone has worked with your friend there, and then, you know, you've become friends with everyone. And it's a really nice, everyone's there because they love the snow, essentially. So you've all got something in common from the start.
And so I imagine, you know, with all the adventures that you've been on, started traveling and like working in all these different countries and doing a lot of it solo, I imagine you've learned a lot about yourself. What are kind of the things that fall into that category, things you've learned about yourself over the past few years?
Confidence is a big thing that I've learned. I think I've always been fairly confident, but the confidence internally as well, because I've always sort of seemed confident a lot of the time, but maybe worried about what people thought of me and stuff. And I think in the past few years, especially since starting my account, I'm just like, I don't care anymore what anyone thinks of me, which is a big thing, growing in that. And sometimes when you do go solo to certain places, like I remember just a few months ago in Vietnam, I went to a bar, like at the rooftop, and everyone was with their friends, and I just went on my own, and I sat there and I was like, this is a bit uncomfortable and awkward, because, like, you know, you should be chatting and having a good time with your friends, or, you know, I was just sort of sitting there. But putting myself in that uncomfortable situation, it makes you feel more comfort in those situations. So I think growing in confidence is huge, and learning a lot about other people and taking bits of other people that sort of become bits of me, essentially, at the end of the day. Like, you meet so many cool people in the world. Like, if you go and explore other places, people who do travel that you meet outside of their hometown, like, they're looking to find out more. You know, they're hungry for more adventure and more life. And so you end up learning so many things from other people, I think. Learn how to cook, which is good, from living in shared houses. Definitely couldn't cook when I was 17.
It is so true, though, like from meeting other people or experiencing different cultures, and you just like pick up whatever you like from those people or from that culture. You're like, I'm just going to take that with me now. And that's now part of me and part of like something that I do. And so you end up with this like mix, like lucky bag of random stuff, but it's all the stuff that's like resonated with you, you know? And so I think that's always quite nice. In terms of caring less about what other people think, like, how have you managed to do that? Like, what's that journey been like? Because I know that's something that holds a lot of people back from doing a lot of things, you know, whether it's a different job or moving or relationships or anything.
Recently, especially since starting these accounts, because I would always used to, you know, look at posts that I was going to post multiple times and be like, should I post that? I don't know. And really overthink it. I don't know why, but I think a lot of people do it. They're like, oh no, maybe I won't post that. But at the end of the day, it can only gain things or experience or share experience with other people. I think there's so much to gain and nothing to lose, really, with a lot of things you go for in life. And if you have that fear, if you let it take over and you are too scared to do it, then you're not going to have that opportunity. But if you actually go for it, then you're going to find out if you like it or not, or find out so much about yourself through it.
So what's going on then with the account now? Like, what's your plan? You've had this like mad growth over the last couple of months. I presume you're going to keep going, right? And try and turn this into something?
I'm definitely going to keep it going. My goal was to always sort of keep going to grow it. And I did not expect it to go so quick. But now, like, seeing how many other people have questions about it, I want to answer them. And I want to encourage other people to travel. And with social media, even though it can be a really negative thing, you can reach so many people with it that you can't reach in real life, Trying to share that with people from the other side of the world, that they can do it as well. And that I want people to know that you really don't need loads of money to travel. I think that's a common misconception as well, that all these people that are traveling are rich, when a lot of people are just spending the money they have on traveling, and it doesn't have to be a lot of the time.
Have you started like trying to monetize like your accounts at all yet?
Been sort of reaching out to brands. I want to start doing that and working with other people to monetize. But I've been quite careful, even though it grew quite quick and I could have monetized a bit earlier. Like, I've had a couple of people reach out, but it's people that I don't see value in or want to work with. So I want to keep it 100% me and like 100% what I want to share with people. I don't want to end up doing a job, even if they pay me a few grand for a video or something. I don't want to do it just because of the money. I want to do it because it's something I believe in and want to share with people. Because at the end of the day, if I'm looking at Instagram and someone's selling me something that they don't actually believe in, I think you can see that, for one, and two, it's just not true to themselves.
Like, you might be able to cash in on the short term with a couple of nice brand deals, but like, long term, that's not going to be where you want to be, because like people can feel it, people notice it, and pretty much straight away. Can we talk about Japan a little bit? Because a lot of your content is obviously based around Japan. You've spent a lot of time living there. It looks fucking amazing. It's on my bucket list to go there. I've never been. And so I have a friend who spent a lot of time in Japan growing up, and his dad actually owns a farm in Japan. And so we're always talking about going over there. And he always says to me, he's like, Stephen, you particularly would love Japan. And I'm like, oh my God. So I really want to go.
Come to Japan. It's life-changing.
Really? Why do you say that?
The culture's so different to Western culture. And if you do immerse yourself and take parts of their culture, you learn a lot about sort of slowing down life. And the respect over here is huge, which I think we don't really have as much in Western culture, like the respect level. And that's a really big thing, yeah.
How does that like show up in kind of like day-to-day life?
It's a big difference everywhere. You'll see it in Tokyo, like even if you go first day, you'll be on a train and no one will talk because they don't want to annoy other people, because of the work culture in Japan that everyone knows. They work crazy hours. People are tired, and then so other people want to have that respect and not make someone's day a bit more annoying because of talking on the train. Something that you wouldn't think about in Western countries, you'd chat to your friends on the train and stuff, but over here you wouldn't be talking on the phone, or it even has signs saying like no talking on the phone, put your phone on silent, because they want people to enjoy the peace.
That sounds so nice. What else about kind of Japanese culture like surprised you?
I think they just always think about other people here, which actually a lot of my Japanese friends say that that's what they don't like about Japan, because Japanese people end up not sharing their opinions so much and not speaking up about certain things. But a lot of Westerners really not like that about Japan, but it's one of them things where they always think about the other people first before doing something, such as like wearing masks, because they wore masks here before COVID, and wearing masks is to prevent other people getting sick, not because of themselves. How nice people are here. Along with the respect, they're so helpful and friendly.
Do you have like any like stories of that happening?
Oh, quite a few, yeah. I've got, my first winter, I got helped so many times by so many people because I didn't know what I was doing at all. Like, such as the lady who was helping me with my ski bags. And I just remember people saying good morning, and I was like, this doesn't happen in the UK. I don't know. This isn't normal for me. People being overly friendly. Or like, if I needed to call someone, I could borrow their phone, which obviously happens in Western countries as well. But I think, like, around where I live, there's a lot of farming areas because it's in the countryside, and neighbours will constantly come round and give you vegetables from their garden, and always just trying to give to everyone.
Like, those kind of things are all like quite small and simple, but like I imagine they add up to like a feeling, you know, where it's just like you feel like when you feel that people around you are kind of nice and are open to helping you if you need it. I think that probably like makes you feel differently.
A feeling of safety, definitely. Safety is the biggest reason I love like actually living in Japan, because all like half the things I do here I couldn't do back in the UK. And New Zealand's also a really safe country, but back in the UK, like, I wouldn't walk down a street in London at night time on my own if it was like a dark alleyway or something. I don't know, it just seems kind of scary. But over here, I would have no second thought about it ever. In Tokyo, it's crazy how safe it is. Like, I'll leave my phone, wallet, everything on a table. I could leave it there for 2 hours and I'll come back and it's there. It's really wild. Yeah, there's people passing out on the train station floors at like 5 a.m. after a night out, and they've got their phone and wallet out. No one will touch them. Which in the UK, that'd be gone in 2 seconds probably.
It's so true. I had a similar experience when I was in Singapore, and I was with a friend who lived there at the time, and we went to one of the hawker markets, and it's like right in the middle of the city, like super, super busy, like tons of people going around after work. And my friend like left his work bag with his laptop in it, like just on the table, and walked off to get food. And I was like, Kevin, like, what are you doing? Like, it's going to be gone. He was like, no. He's like, honestly, not here. He was like, it'll be here when I get back.
Singapore is, I think, the safest country in the world.
Now, unfortunately, some of the reasons it's so safe is because if you do steal stuff, they like chop off your hand or something crazy, right? Like, well, I don't know if it's not that, but like they're super strict.
There's crime underground.
But yeah, but it's more that like if you get caught doing something, like the punishments are like super severe, right? Like they just like really crack down.
It's quite similar in Japan, I think, actually, with that. The whole police side of things is kind of scary sometimes to think about. In Japan, you can get held for like 20-something days with no reasoning. They can take you to and put you in a cell for, it's like 20, 22 or 28, I can't remember, days with no reason at all. And it could have been someone else that's done whatever. It's not a big thing, crime, so you don't see it happening much, but I think that's why, like, when something does happen, it's really big.
What are some of your favorite places around Japan?
Osaka is my favorite city. Or I went to Kyoto this year, actually, and I'd never been before, and that's really nice, but I only spent 3 days there. But Osaka is a really cool city. I've been there quite a few times. I'd rate it higher than Tokyo because people there are so chilled and friendly, and Tokyo is like crazy and cool, but people are in a rush, always, constantly, everywhere. Whereas Osaka, I think people are more relaxed and friendly. A lot of people say that about Osaka as well. Osaka's really nice. And then Shizuoka, like by the coast, also really nice. And then Nagano, Niigata prefectures is where I spend most of my time, which is the countryside. And this is what I want to sort of share through my videos, is more of the countryside of Japan. Because the countryside is struggling business-wise hugely in Japan. Not enough people go there, and then a lot of the younger Japanese people, when they get old enough, they get out and go to the cities because there's nothing going on really. It's lovely and relaxing and slow life, but it's not enough going on for people to stay. But it's so beautiful, and I think they just don't push the tourism enough. Tourists don't think to go out into the countryside, but it's where you're going to find the real Japan.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I think about going there, it's like, yeah, sure, I would want to go to the cities, but like for me, the attraction would actually have been more the countryside. And maybe that's because like I have a friend who grew up in the countryside of Japan. So he's told me about this and I've seen like pictures and stuff. And so maybe that's why I'm attracted to it. But for me, that's what it seems so, so beautiful, so stunning, like lots of different types of landscapes and, as well, like depending on where you go. It seems awesome. There's this video on your profile that I actually want to read a little snippet from it because I watched the video like 10 times and I thought it was amazing. I want to ask you about it. So you'll recognize it straight away. Obviously, it's your own video. But you say the point of this video is to remind you that your loved ones won't be around forever. So go on adventures with your mates, be there for them through the hard times, dance through the good times, celebrate their birthdays, celebrate their big wins and small wins, support their dreams, even if they're far-fetched. And it goes on like this. And you said really wonderful things. I think this is so, I saw this. I was like, that is fucking amazing. I love that like kind of attitude and intention that's behind that. Is that something that you try and like practice in your own life?
That's my favorite video.
Really? Why? What do you like about it so much?
Something I believe in really strongly. I think a lot of people take friendship or family for granted so much. I definitely have done it so much before. But when something happens, you realize the importance of it. So like appreciating those sort of things every day, I think is more important whilst you can, whilst you can share it with other people and show them the appreciation, because a lot of people won't know how much they mean to you unless you tell them.
I think anybody who watches that video or kind of hears that will probably agree. And again, they often kind of just then go, oh yeah, that was lovely, and go back to my life. But for me, I think it's like, no, fucking do something with it. It's so easy to just go back to like your default life, or, it's like, oh, what are you going to do this evening? Oh, I'll just stay in and watch Netflix, right? And it's like, well, no, like, does your mate want to go for a beer, or do you want to go like watch the sunset or have a surf, or, why don't you plan that trip that you always talk about, but like you never actually do with your friends? Fucking do it, Don't talk about it forever, because you talk about it forever and then you wake up and, it'll be a couple of decades later and maybe you're not friends with them anymore. God forbid, maybe they're not here anymore. Right. And so what good was all your talk about plans?
100%. I think that's so important. Definitely. The fact that your life isn't promised. Tomorrow's not promised. Again, one of the quotes I remember from years ago is this one where it said, if you're not here tomorrow, would you be happy with what you've done today? And that's what I try and live by a lot and think, would I be happy with what I've done today? And at the end of the day, sometimes, obviously, you're not doing something you're passionate about. Like I had to work in Tesco's through COVID because there was nothing else to do. I wasn't passionate about it. But if you make it enjoyable, if you look at the positives and get the maximum out of that, then you'd be happy with what you've done today. But if you focus on the negatives, then it's always going to be a negative situation. When you start focusing on the negatives, there's so much that you can see. You could go into a rabbit hole of it. But if you start flipping that and focusing on the positives of sort of any situation, there's so many positives that you can see as well.
And it comes back to, I think, one of the reasons that you're talking about why people, won't go and take a risk and, go traveling or ski skiing or whatever, is because they can see all the things that will go wrong. Right? They can see all of like the downsides, the potential pitfalls, instead of looking at the flip side of like, well, like what are all the things that could go right? All of the things that you can't even think of, but the unexpected things, like, the people that you might meet that you don't know, right? The experiences that you might have, the trips you might go on, that you haven't even planned, that you don't even know about these places yet. And it's just like shifting to what side of the coin you're going to look at. And the decision looks a lot different.
At the same points, you can have a negative and a positive opinion of the exact same situation. Like my situation where my life's not constant, I move around a lot and don't have a constant income, don't have a constant group of friends. They could all be really negative things, but you could also see it as really positive things. There's so many positives in most situations. Do
you have any dreams for yourself?
I think that after all starting this account and everything, I've realized I want to do more of that and go maybe into full-time content creation and use it to inspire other people. So my dreams is to continue inspiring people to travel or work abroad and learn through them experiences, because there's so much to learn through travel and working abroad that you can't learn in a classroom. So I want to keep sharing that with people, inspiring like other girls to ski and snowboard or skateboard is a big passion of mine as well. Trying to even out the ratio between men to women in snow sports and skateboarding or any sort of sports.
What's holding that back, do you think?
I think it's always been looked at as like a male industry sport. In big competitions, the prize money was always a lot more for men to women in most competitions in like skiing and snowboarding. And only recent years they've made it equal in most countries. In Japan, it's still not equal in some competitions. Even though they're hitting the same jumps, they're doing the same course, the prize money will be a lot lower for girls. So I think when young girls see that, they think that they're not worth as much, you know. And it's not just down to competition, but generation above me who were all ski instructors. I grew up, when I went to France, every ski instructor I had was a old French man. Like there was no girls really. Even when I took my exams, there was one female trainer and there was like 10 male ones. So I think having someone to look at that's done it, then you can see yourself doing it a little bit more.
That seems to be like the biggest thing in kind of increasing like participation in this, like, you know, because there's so many sports that are like that, right? Like surfing is a big one as well. But then in Australia, you know, you kind of have a couple of like amazing women Australian surfers come through, and suddenly, you know, that young girl like looks up to them and idolizes them. The same thing happened with the soccer recently with the Australian women's team, like the Matildas, you know, getting all the way to the semi-final, and like the country went crazy for it. And I don't know if it was just kind of like, you know, the bias of it being everywhere that I started to notice it more. But like I would go to the park and I was like, I don't think I'd ever seen as many like young girls just like out playing soccer or like playing around, do you know? And I don't know if it was because like I was more attuned to like noticing it and they were always there, but like it definitely felt like there was such a buzz because, you know, you have to have idols, right? Like you have to have somebody to look up to. And if you do, then you're like, oh, I want to be like them. I want to follow them, especially as a kid, right? It's so simplistic. Like all you want to do is like you see something on the TV and you're like, I want to do that. You know, then you go to the park and you try and do what they did.
Yeah, that happened with skateboarding as well. Like skateboarding just got put into the Olympics only a few years ago. And as soon as it got put into the Olympics, people started seeing it as like a sport and then wanted to do it. And there was a huge boom in like I ended up getting qualified to teach skateboarding over one of the COVID summers, and so many people wanted skateboard lessons. But before that, because the guy I ended up working with, he'd run a company for a while, and you know, it wasn't like that before, but as soon as it was in the Olympics, young, like anyone, not just girls, but everyone was sort of seeing it as like, oh, maybe I could do that now. Because it wasn't really seen before unless you went to YouTube and watched some skateboarders edit, which everyone sort of saw as people like that don't do anything apart from go to the park.
Well, Molly, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me. I had an absolute blast. You've got a cool story. You really do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that chat that I just had with Molly. If you want to go and find her on socials, you can find her at 5ftMol. So that's the number 5, FTMOL. You can follow her there. Her content is really, really nice. It's really, really wholesome. If you have any interest in Japan or traveling or working as a ski instructor, I definitely recommend going and giving it a look. It's really beautiful content. That's all for today. I will see you back here next week for the next episode of the Two Roads podcast.